Now, tell me, what goes into protecting the Ross Sea, and how did you first learn about it? How did you become involved in wanting to make this a protected mass of water?
Well, I first learned about it when I was a young child. My parents were great storytellers, and they'd tell me about the great explorers going down to the Ross Sea to try and get to the South Pole. So Amundsen and Captain Scott racing from the Ross Sea all the way to the South Pole. But in recent years, I've learned about it for the wrong reasons, and that is because fishermen, big industrial fishing interests, are going down to the Ross Sea to literally hoover up these animals called Antarctic toothfish, which is literally, they describe it as a gold rush. This is literally white gold. As the oceans of the world are overfished, fishing companies are going further and further south and further north in the world to hoover up the last fish. And so what's happened is that 24 countries and the European Union have sat down. These are the countries responsible for governing what's happening down in Antarctica. And they're trying to set up a legal regime to protect this area and to set up a marine protected area. It hasn't worked because for 4 years they've been negotiating this, and unfortunately they haven't succeeded. There's a lot of blame which is going on. The New Zealanders are blamed because they were the country which first allowed fishing down in the Ross Sea. The Americans are blamed because largely it's American restaurants which serve this food. The Russians are blamed and the Chinese are blamed because they vetoed the proposal. The South Africans and the Argentinians and the Chileans and the Australians and New Zealanders are blamed because they're the countries which surround Antarctica and perhaps should have stood up a little bit louder and stood up to protect this area. So there's a lot of blame which is going on. But with respect, it's not useful because we need to move towards a place where we all agree to set this place aside for our children and our grandchildren. So that's what's hopefully going to be happening this year in 2015 when they meet again in Hobart towards the end of the year.
Now, what needs to happen for all of these world leaders, these 24 countries, to all get on board on the same page with the Ross Sea?
Well, that's the challenge because we all see the world in very, very different ways. After the swim, I'm going to Russia. I'm going to meet some of the leaders there to try and persuade them about the importance of this place. Russia has got 9 scientific bases down in Antarctica. Of the 13 seas around Antarctica, 5 of them are named after Russian explorers. So they have a huge interest down in Antarctica. So that's where I'll be starting my campaign.
Now, I think some people watching this video might ask, how do the oceans actually affect our everyday life? Can you tell us why protecting the Ross Sea is important to us in our everyday lives?
It's important for a number of reasons. I mean, first, imagine a world without the Serengeti. Imagine a world without the Kruger National Park. Imagine a world without Yellowstone, these enormous great national parks which bring so much joy to us and so much biodiversity to us. These national parks were set up about 100 years ago. We didn't do the same in the oceans. So it's important that we do this in order to protect the biodiversity in the oceans and to protect this for our children. The second reason is because the Ross Sea is an enormous carbon sink. So it draws down the carbon from the atmosphere and so protects us from climate change. And the last reason why it's important to protect this area is because if you fish out all these fish, and what we know is that this can happen in a very, very short period of time. Back in the 1920s, over a period of just 7 years, all the blue whales were taken out of the Ross Sea in just 7 years. So when you allow industrial fishing interests to go into these places, they will literally hoover up everything. And you know what we're saying is we need to have sustainable fishing. And what's happening now down in the Ross Sea is not sustainable. And unless it is sustainable, we're going to have problems.
Now, I want to come back to the swim. These 5 records you're going to break. It's actually the most dangerous undertaking ever done by any swimmer, or I think any man. Are you afraid?
I think these swims collectively will be the most dangerous swims I've undertaken for sure. All the swims will be in water which is below zero, between 0 and -1.7, where seawater freezes. You know, sitting here in London, I do get worried, but I'm sure that when I get down there and I have to do the job, I'll be up for it. I've been training now for a long period of time. But there's a fine balance between bravery and foolhardiness, and it's a line which one shouldn't cross.
All right, Lewis, how can anyone watching this video follow your adventure online and show their support for your cause?
Thank you so much. We're going to be tweeting live on this expedition all the way down to the Ross Sea, and then during the 5 swims, and then also doing a lot on Facebook. So if people can follow us on Facebook or on Twitter, that would be absolutely magnificent. Thank you.
Lewis, we wish you the best of luck, and I look forward to speaking to you after the 5 swims to see what kind of progress we've made.
Thank you very, very much.